So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs within a very short span of time. Now the idea is that you get to cover your current affairs on a daily basis, but you don't have to spend your entire day just reading the newspaper. Therefore, we shall cover the entire day's current affairs through this lecture. But just watching this lecture would be job half done, because just after watching it, you need to revise it as well. Why? Well, revision helps in consolidating these current affairs in your memory. Otherwise, you'll quickly forget them. Now, you can revise these current affairs from the notes provided by us, and these notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel. The link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Alright then, let's begin today's session. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. So here we go. So daily current affairs, 17 July, Thursday, and here is the list. We'll be covering only 4 topics because these were the only 4 topics that were significant from the perspective of civil services examination. Okay. Now, number 1 is Indian Council of Agricultural Researchers Foundation Day. So 17 July is the Foundation Day of Indian Council of Agricultural Research, and it is the 97th Foundation Day. Okay, so we'll talk about Indian Council of Agricultural Research and the kind of role it plays in India's agricultural development. Then, well, we all know that Delhi again suffered from an earthquake. It was a mild earthquake. Nonetheless, it did some damage. And it has again pointed out the vulnerabilities that urban centers in India face when it comes to earthquake resilience. Okay, so we'll talk about earthquake resilience in India. Then the third topic is Open Market Sales Scheme. Now, what is Open Market Sales Scheme, which is conducted by FCI Food Corporation of India, because recently government did that. So we'll talk about this, and in the end we'll talk about Tribal Genome Sequencing Project. Why? Because Gujarat has become the first state to conduct this Tribal Genome Sequencing Project, okay, at state level. Generally, these genome sequencing projects are done at national level. Gujarat is the first state to do that at a state level, okay. So what is genome sequencing? What is the advantage of genome sequencing, and what is tribal genome sequencing? Okay, we'll talk about all these issues. Clear? So let's straight away jump into the lecture. Without further ado, let's start the lecture, starting with topic number 1, and that is Indian Council of Agricultural Researchers Foundation Day. So 17 July is the 97th Foundation Day of Indian Council of Agricultural Research. So yes, it is 97 years old. And it was started during British times in 1929. Back then, it was known as Imperial Council of Agricultural Research. But when India got independence, it was renamed as Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Now, the thing with Indian Council of Agricultural Research is, as the name suggests, well, it basically takes care of agricultural research in India, in various laboratories, in various agricultural universities. So many agricultural universities, many labs, many seed technology labs, many fertilizer technology labs, they're all affiliated to Indian Council of Agricultural Research. And this council basically takes care of path-breaking agricultural research, path-breaking seed research, path-breaking agricultural education. Yes, Indian Council of Agricultural Research is also involved in agricultural education. That is why many agricultural universities are affiliated to ICAR. And well, ICAR makes sure that these agricultural universities impart good agricultural education so that our country produces agricultural scientists. Because, like it or not, India is still a country where agriculture is the prime moving force. Okay, majority of Indians live in rural areas, and in rural areas, well, agriculture is the most dominant activity. Therefore, we cannot leave agriculture, right? In that regard, in that context, Indian Council of Agricultural Research plays a pivotal role. Clear? So, we'll start with this. Okay, let's talk about this. So, ICAR's Foundation Day, 97th Foundation Day. Okay, and it is celebrated on 17th July. So, in this topic, we'll only talk about ICAR, its history, under which ministry or under which department it functions, and what are its functions. Clear? So yeah, if we talk about Indian Council of Agricultural Research, well, like I said before, it was formed in 1929 as Imperial Council of Agricultural Research. When India got independence, it was renamed as Indian Council of Agricultural Research, and it is a body that is registered under Societies Act or Societies Registration Act. Okay, any which way. It functions under DARE. DARE is a department under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. So the name of the ministry is Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, and DARE is the department under which ICAR functions as an autonomous agency. So ICAR is an autonomous agency, but it generally reports to DARE. Okay, or DARE, this department basically takes care of ICAR. Now, what is the full form of DARE? Department of Agricultural Research and Education. Okay, now it is an autonomous body that takes care of agricultural research and education. So remember this part. Okay, ICAR, though the name says, well, the word research is in its name, right? Education is not in its name, but still you have to remember this. ICAR takes care of agricultural education as well. In fact, well, in our country, for example, if you want to get recruited as civil servants, well, there is this body called UPSC, right? If you want to get recruited as agricultural scientists, agricultural professors, okay, there is this body called Agricultural Scientist Recruitment Board, ASRB. It conducts an exam, National Eligibility Test, NET. So like UPSC conducts exams, ASRB also conducts exams, and this ASRB organization, Agricultural Scientist Recruitment Board, it is supported by ICAR. Okay, so remember this part. Now, the thing is that on the occasion of 97th Foundation Day, well, Union Minister of Agriculture was also present there, and he basically announced certain initiatives. Okay, those initiatives are given in your notes. Those are normal initiatives that were announced for agricultural research, basically, that were announced by Union Minister of Agriculture on the occasion of celebration of 97th Foundation Day of ICAR. That's about it. Okay, we do not need to know anything further. Clear? And we'll quickly jump to topic number 2, and that is earthquake resilience in India. Okay, now you see, you all know earthquakes, or earthquakes are also known as seismic activity, right? Now, seismic activity originates because of tectonic plate or plate movement, lithospheric plate movements, right? You must have studied about this in geography. Now, the thing is that, well, the magnitude of earthquake is measured on Richter scale. But there is this another thing called intensity of an earthquake. Intensity is different from magnitude, because magnitude says that what is the energy of earthquake, okay, how much energy is released, how much shaking is happening. Intensity tells about the damage caused by the earthquake. Now, damage can be not just the function of energy. I mean, high energy earthquakes will cause a lot of damage. But if on that landmass there are so many high-rise buildings, that would also cause a lot of damage. So, as far as the damage part is concerned, or vulnerabilities to earthquake is concerned, well, it is not just the function of the magnitude of earthquake, okay? It is also the function of urban infrastructure. How many high-rise buildings are there? Are they earthquake-proof or not? All these things are there. So, based on the vulnerability of different parts of the country, well, the entire country is divided into 5 zones. These are known as earthquake zones, okay? Zone 1 is an area where there is negligible possibility of an earthquake damage. Zone 2 is low possibility or low damage. Zone 3 is moderate damage. Zone 4 is high damage, and Zone 5 is very high damage, okay? Mostly in Himalayan areas. Clear? Now, Delhi lies in a sensitive zone, and that is why it periodically faces earthquakes one way or the other. Alright, so in this particular topic, we will focus on what is the zone map and what initiatives has the government taken to protect urban centers in India from earthquakes. Okay, so we'll talk about, first of all, India's vulnerabilities, and then what initiatives have been taken by Government of India and state governments to protect its citizens from earthquakes. Clear? So let's talk about this. So earthquake resilience in India. All right. So like I said before, well, there are different zones in India. Zone 1 is zero impact of earthquake. Okay. Zone 2 is low, 3 moderate, 4 high, zone 5 very high. Now this zoning of India is done by an organization called Bureau of Indian Standards. So please remember its name. Okay. And it has basically created India's map. So I'll show you this map. Okay. This is how the earthquake zoning map looks. Okay. So the extreme red portion is zone 5. Orangish, dark orange is zone 4. Light orange, this area is zone 3. And extremely light orange, peachish color, that is zone 2. Clear? Now, as you can see, New Delhi lies in zone 4. New Delhi is quite vulnerable. And as you can see, mostly the thing is that this Himalayan region, because it is tectonically active, it lies in zone 4 or zone 5 even. The entire northeast lies in zone 5, right? Yes, Gujarat area also lies in zone 5 and 4 because there is a fault line in the Indian plate. There are various geographic reasons, okay? We'll study about them in the geography lectures, but I just wanted you to see this map, okay? This is how the map looks. Therefore, based on the zone, district administration prepares different plans for urban development. If the city lies in zone 4, then there is a different plan for earthquake resilience. Okay, building codes are different. Your building should be earthquake proof. Open spaces should be there. All these things are taken care of depending upon the location of that city in this zone map. Clear? And remember, the zone map is created by Bureau of Indian Standards. Okay. Now the thing is, well, as it is said that around 60% of the entire country, 60% of India lies in earthquake prone zone, zone 3 to zone 2 to zone 5. Okay, very little India is in zone 1. Okay, so yes, the entire country is vulnerable. Plus, there are many other vulnerabilities. India is vulnerable to earthquake damage. It's not just that earthquakes would occur in India. Earthquakes occur all over the world. Okay. Earthquakes would occur all over the world. These are natural disasters. This is a natural phenomenon. But how well you are prepared to cause minimum damage or to allow minimum damage, that's the question. Okay. Now, India is pretty vulnerable in that regard. First of all, a lot of cities in India have outdated infrastructure, including Delhi. 80% of Delhi's buildings do not meet seismic safety standards, earthquake safety standards. Okay. Now, if there is a severe earthquake in Delhi, it would cause a lot of damage. Then, urban liquefaction zone. You see, most of India's urban cities, especially most of India's northern cities, they are made on soft soil. Okay. Now, soft soil is more vulnerable to earthquakes because when earth shakes, this soft soil moves and it carries the buildings with it. This is known as liquefaction. So many urban areas, including Delhi, East Delhi, Guwahati, Gangtok, they are built on soft water saturated soils, increasing the risk of soil liquefaction. So this is one vulnerability. Remember this, urban liquefaction zones. These zones are the most vulnerable to earthquakes. Then overcrowded cities. Because if cities are high, if they have high population density, more people are going to die or get injured. Okay, because crowded spaces are there, cramped buildings are there. So if that building falls, many people would die in that. So that is one problem. Plus, this is the case everywhere, enforcement gaps. Okay, there are building codes, but those building codes are not being implemented properly. There are earthquake safety codes, but those earthquake safety codes are not being implemented properly. And that is why a lot of damage is caused. Okay. But despite these vulnerabilities, it doesn't mean that India has not done anything to protect its citizens from earthquakes. Okay, a lot of things have been done. So what are those things? First of all, we passed National Disaster Management Act, okay, in 2005, which created National Disaster Response Force, State Disaster Response Force, okay, National Disaster Management Authority. So these authorities take care of disaster relief rehabilitation. Then we have increased the number of earthquake monitoring stations, also known as seismic observatories. A lot of seismic observatories are there in India which detect earthquakes and release early warnings. Clear? Then, well, National Center for Seismology, okay, seismic activity, it released an app called Bhukamp app. It is a real-time earthquake monitoring app. You can also download it and get updated every time there is an earthquake so that people are quick to react. Okay, so real-time monitoring of earthquakes. Then earthquake risk indexing. Most of the cities in India are being indexed on the basis of their vulnerability to earthquakes. Okay, so this is being done. Plus, well, updated building codes are being implemented in different cities. So there are many other initiatives that have been taken by the government. The catch is that these initiatives, though are launched, they're not implemented properly. So the need of the hour is to implement these initiatives properly. Clear? Makes sense? All right. One more thing. I told you, right? In the beginning only. You should remember this, okay? The intensity, the magnitude of earthquake is measured on Richter scale. You must have seen this. You must have heard also that the earthquake is 6, 7. This is Richter scale, magnitude, the energy that is released. Then there is an intensity scale. That is called Mercalli scale. There are many other names also. So remember these two scales. Intensity is not the energy of earthquake. Intensity is the damage it can cause. Magnitude is the one which actually measures the earthquake magnitude. Okay, a 6 Richter scale magnitude, 6 degree magnitude earthquake can cause a lot of damage, and an 8 degree magnitude can cause little damage because of the preparation of the authorities. Okay, you should remember this part. Nonetheless, this is all we need to know as far as earthquakes are concerned. Now let's shift to third topic, and that is open market sales scheme. And the reason why open market sales scheme was in the news because, well, government has increased the reserve price under open market sales scheme of rice and wheat. Now the question is, what is reserve price? What is open market sales scheme? This open market sales scheme is conducted by FCI, Food Corporation of India, okay, under public distribution system. So what is this entire thing? Clear? Let's talk about this. So open market sales scheme. So listen to me carefully. There is this thing called public distribution system. Now there is this body called Food Corporation of India. Okay. This Food Corporation of India procures food grains, rice and wheat from farmers at MSP. You all know what MSP is, right? So procurement is done at MSP by FCI. FCI then stores it in its buffer stock, central pool, okay, and then distributes it, transports it to different parts of the country at fair price shops. So in different parts of the country, there are these fair price shops, almost in every village or group of villages. So the grains are transported to these fair price shops, okay? And at these fair price shops, you can buy subsidized food grains, subsidized wheat, subsidized rice, all these things can be done by you, okay? So whoever are eligible beneficiaries, okay, under National Food Security Act, they can get subsidized food grains from these fair price shops, okay, 3 rupee per kg rice, 2 rupee per kg wheat, all these things. Now, most of the times what happens is that FCI procures a lot of food grains because it has guaranteed farmers that you can sell wheat and rice to us at MSP. So FCI procures a lot of food grains, okay, and then distributes it at these fair price shops. But most of the times the requirement of these fair price shops is low and FCI's procurement levels are high. So there is this extra stored grains that remain in these buffer stocks, okay. So extra surplus food grains are in these buffer stocks, or we call it central pool. Clear? Now, what happens is that sometimes, okay, there is supply shortage of food grains in the market, okay, and whenever there is high demand but supply is short, it also causes inflation. right? So what does FCI do in this situation? Under such a situation, FCI offloads these surplus food grains in market. So FCI sells these surplus food grains in the market to private traders. What happens? When FCI offloads these surplus food grains, supply shortage gets sorted, supply comes up, demand is there, supply comes up, so food inflation also gets sorted. You understand my point? So whenever there is supply shortage, high food grain inflation, or sometimes, well, FCI is unable to carry so many food grains. It is beyond FCI's carrying capacity. It offloads these, or it sells these extra surplus food grains into the market to private traders. Clear? Now this selling to private traders from your central pool by FCI is nothing but open market sales scheme. Okay. Now open market sales scheme is of two types. Open market sales scheme domestic, open market sales scheme foreign. In case of foreign, FCI basically exports these food grains outside India. In open market sales scheme domestic, we sell it to domestic private traders so that supply of food grains in India comes up. Clear? Now there are three reasons why FCI conducts these operations, open market sales scheme. Okay. First of all, to take care of supply shortages, food supply shortages, right? Then number two, moderating or bring down inflation, especially food inflation. And sometimes, most of the times, to reduce its carrying cost. You see, FCI has to transport these grains, FCI has to store these grains in its godowns. Now that costs a lot of money. Okay. So sometimes, well, FCI does not have enough capacity to store these grains. Okay. It is beyond the capacity, storage capacity and economic capacity of FCI to store these extra surplus grains. And if FCI feels that it has enough buffer stock, it will sell the extra buffer stock in the market to reduce its carrying cost. Because it is basically FCI has to spend a lot of money in storage, right? So these are the three reasons why FCI conducts open market sales scheme. Now, open market sales scheme domestic is conducted to take care of supply shortages, food inflation and reducing carrying cost. Open market sales scheme foreign to exporting of food grains is only done to bring down carrying cost. Because if you are exporting food grains, it won't increase supply in India, right? And won't bring down food inflation in India. So for exporting is done to reduce its carrying cost, to earn some money. Okay. Now the price at which this open market sales scheme happens, or the price at which FCI sells these food grains to private traders, is known as the reserve price. Remember this. Okay. So basically what happens is that FCI conducts auction, okay, and FCI quotes a reserve price. Whichever private trader bids the highest gets the contract to buy those food grains from FCI. Simple. This is open market sales scheme. Now the reason why it was in the news was because recently government has increased the reserve price. Now there are various reasons behind that, and those reasons are mentioned in your notes. Okay, but the reasons can be simple. FCI already has a lot of food grains. There was a bumper crop last year, there was a bumper crop this year, okay, of wheat. So FCI has surplus food grains. So it is selling it at high price. Clear? Nonetheless, well, open market sales scheme, you should understand what this open market sales scheme is all about. Okay. Now, certain important points. Well, this open market sales scheme is done by FCI through e-auction route. And this e-auction is mostly done online at National Commodity and Derivatives Exchange, NCDEX. Okay. It is done at a reserve price. And look, mostly rice, wheat and coarse grains, jowar, bajra, ragi, are sold. Okay, these grains are sold to private traders. Okay, but do you know what? Well, there is this program in India called ethanol blending program. Under ethanol blending program, petrol is blended with ethanol and used in cars. So your cars contain 80% petrol and 20% ethanol. This is done basically to reduce our dependency on petrol, imported oil, crude oil, right? Now we need ethanol for that. Now ethanol can be produced by, well, byproducts of sugarcane. They can also be produced from rice. So some rice under open market sales scheme is sold to ethanol distilleries. Generally, rice, wheat and coarse grains are sold to private traders in mandis, markets. But some rice is sold to ethanol distilleries at a very low reserve price so that these ethanol distilleries can produce ethanol, ethyl alcohol, so that it can be blended with petrol. Right? So remember this part. This is the important point I want you to remember. Clear? So this is all as far as this is all you need to know as far as open market sales scheme is concerned. Though we cover this topic extensively in our economics lectures in our Gurukul course, but well, I've explained the major points with respect to open market sales scheme. And now let's move on to, well, last news item of the day, and that is tribal genome sequencing project. Now, you need to understand two things. Okay, first of all, what is genome sequencing? Now, what is genome sequencing? You all know that all living beings have DNA, okay? And that DNA contains all of their physiological information, okay? That genome, okay? And for the purpose of this lecture, we will use DNA and genome interchangeably, though there is a subtle difference between the two, but we will use it interchangeably, okay? Now, you all are made up of DNA. And you get that DNA, you inherit that DNA from your parents. That is why you resemble your parents a little. Yes? Now, all your physiological information is coded in your DNA. What color will your hair be? What color will your skin be? What will be your height, weight, internal organ functioning? You will be resistant to which antibiotics? You will be more vulnerable to which kind of infections? All these things are in your genetics, in your DNA, in your genome. Clear? Now we need to gather the information of our entire genome, DNA. Now there are different genes in our body and each gene has their own particular function. There are some genes which are responsible for your hair color, some genes which handle your disease vulnerability, some genes handle your skin color, all these things. There are different genes. So we need to map all these genes with their functions. We need to create this table about each and every gene in our body. And there are a lot of genes. So what each and every gene does, okay, what each and every gene's function is, that table is made. Okay, that table is known as genome sequencing. Now scientists do genome sequencing of animals. Scientists have also done genome sequencing of humans. Okay, the biggest project in the world was Human Genome Project. But different races or different nationalities have some variations in their DNA, in their genes. For example, though we all are humans, so we have common DNA. But, well, European DNA would be a little different to Indian DNA. Indian DNA would be a little different to Chinese DNA. Right? There would be some differences. Now, we need information about Indian DNA so that we can basically have information about various things about Indians. Okay, like for example, which disease will cause, or Indian population is more vulnerable to which type of diseases. Indian population is more vulnerable to which types of bacterial infection. Indian population would be more vulnerable or more sensitive to which type of antibiotics. That information we'll get only if we'll do genome sequencing of Indians. Yes or no? Right? Make sense? So that is why genome sequencing is important, because it informs our policymakers, health policymakers, to take various initiatives based on the vulnerabilities of Indians, right? Now, there is this another thing called personalized medicine. Now, what is personalized medicine? You see, your DNA and my DNA has some differences. Maybe in your DNA, there is this thing that will make, there is a particular gene that will make you more sensitive to antibiotics than my body. Yes, or more sensitive to a particular type of antibiotic. Let's call that antibiotic augmentin. There is this antibiotic called augmentin. So you will be more sensitive to augmentin because of your DNA, and I will be least sensitive. Augmentin won't work on me. Now, tomorrow, if you and I both have bacterial infections, doctor would give us augmentin. Doctor would prescribe both of us this antibiotic called augmentin. That augmentin will work on you because you are sensitive to it. But my body is resistant to it. It won't work on me. The doctor would be puzzled. What is happening? This antibiotic is the strongest antibiotic. It works on everyone. Why is it not working on this person? Okay. Then he will do a genetic test for my body. Okay. And then he'll find out a particular gene marker which makes me resistant to augmentin antibiotics. Then he'll understand and then he will prescribe me a different antibiotic. Now, if all doctors in India have access to genome data of most patients in India beforehand, they would be able to give them those medicines, those therapies that their body is suited to. This is known as personalized medicine. But personalized medicine can happen only if you have genome data of most Indians, if you have their medical history, all these things, if they are available, only then you can make sure that personalized medicine is taking root in India, right? So for personalized medicine, because it is the more effective form of medicine, for personalized medicine to be successful, genome sequencing is very important. Clear? Now in India, there are many tribal populations also, okay? And those tribal populations have different DNA, not starkly different, but they have different DNA or genes in them, which makes them vulnerable to certain non-communicable diseases, certain communicable diseases. So if we are serious about tribal health, we need to map the genome of tribals also. So Gujarat has taken lead in that. It is conducting a tribal genome sequencing project so that tribal healthcare can also be rectified. Personalized medicine can be introduced in tribals as well. This is the idea. Okay, I hope you understood the entire background. If you did, now it will be very easy for you to understand what this news is all about. Okay, so tribal genome sequencing project. So we have understood what genome sequencing is. Okay, the biggest project in the world, global level project of genome sequencing was Human Genome Project. It had two versions, read and write. We'll talk about them sometime later. Okay, then Indian government has also conducted genome sequencing. One was Genome India Project. In this, we sampled 10,000 individuals and we sequenced their DNA. Then there is this another project in India, IndiGen project, which is also about genome sequencing of 1,000 individuals. Okay, so these projects have already been conducted. Clear? And now Gujarat is conducting its own genome sequencing project for its tribal population. Clear? That's it. And then there is personalized medicine. I have explained to you what personalized medicine is all about, right? So, well, you can read the definition in your notes, but you understand now what personalized medicine is. Okay? And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. Now, it will add more value. First, if you're consistent and regular with this lecture series and you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us. So please do not forget to do that. And I will see you next time with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.